Hi everybody, and a very warm welcome back to the Watercolour Studio. Now today I'm going to be doing something that takes me out of my comfort zone. So let's roll that intro. Let's see what it's all about. Hey everybody, and a warm welcome back. Now, as I said just now, I really am going to be taking myself out of my comfort zone for this demonstration. Why am I going to do that? Well, it's quite simple really, because the other morning when I was out early one morning walking the dog, there was a deep or heavy mist, and it was so dense that you could see all the little particles of water vapor floating past you, especially when you looked against a darkened background. You could see all these little bits of vapor floating past, and at the same time there must have been hundreds, thousands, probably even more. Every space on every bush was adorned with tons and tons of spiders' webs, each of them dripping in little droplets of water on every thread of every web. It was awesome to see them. But more than that, just as I was doing this walk and looking in all these different cobwebs and getting my camera out and trying to get the right shot and trying to get it looking good, so the sun come out, and it just added that extra bit of an ingredient to the whole atmosphere. So we had light coming through the back of these cobwebs, lighting up bits of green growth and foliage or seed heads, whatever it might be. And I just took so many photographs, unbelievable. I just couldn't stop. It was just fantastic, and I felt that I would love to paint that at some point, but how would I go about that? How would I really get all this dark background and put all these beautiful white droplets? Now, not so bad if I'm working in acrylic or in oil, because we normally leave the lightest, the highlight parts, those little pricks of white light, to the very end of our painting. But how do I do that if I'm doing watercolor? And that sort of, it didn't bother me, but I just wanted to work out how could I do that. So I sat down a couple of days ago with odd bits of paper. Now, I always tell you, as my students, I tell my students at the gallery each week, that if you are doing a painting that there's a little element within that painting you're not sure about, it could be a boat, could be a tree, could be a bit of architecture, it doesn't matter what it is. Simply take a little bit of paper, a little spare piece of odd paper, and practice that little bit that bothers you. Work on it, do several of them, practice, 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 figure a way of doing it, and then you gain more confidence to do it. So when you come to do your big picture, you have all those little bits and pieces that were worrying you sorted out, and it doesn't become a problem. So you don't waste all that time and wreck a picture that you've put so much work into. Well worth working that way and sort of exercising and trying things out before you actually attempt a big one. Anyway, that all aside, I tried to figure out, well, what mediums, what materials can I use and employ to try and give you, the viewer, the sense that you're looking at this beautiful, fine thread of web and all these beautiful little pricks of light conveyed through the droplets of water. And so I did just the same thing as I practiced what I preach, and I had lots of little offcuts of watercolor paper. I tried it with hot press paper, I tried it with rough paper, and I tried it with knot paper, with varying degrees of success. And I also tried different ways of creating that cobweb. And so what I'm going to do now is show you those little tryouts and what happens subsequently, and then I'm going to take myself way out of my comfort zone and try and attempt to film and do one of these and see how we get on. If it works, you'll see it. If it doesn't work, you probably won't see any of this. So yeah, wish me luck, and I'll see you or talk to you as we go through the whole of this process and what I use to get to the point of where we're starting. Okay, everybody, well, there you go. That is the practice pieces that I did to see how I could best create a visually pleasing cobweb against a darkened background. Now, I tried different papers in the form of hot press, knot and rough, just to see how each of the mediums that I was using would be taken on the papers. This, for instance, is a piece of rough paper, and I think this one is a knot, or one of these is a knot surface, quite a smooth one as it was, and the rest are hot press. What I did do is, first and foremost, I tackled the idea by using a spent match, one of these sort of household matches that I sharpened up with a blade, and to give myself as fine a point as I could. And then I used some material like this one. This is actually a Pebeo drawing gum. Now I will say right from the outset that I have never been, and never shall I be, a fan of drawing gum or stopping gum, or whatever you want to call this, latex material. I've never been a fan of it in watercolor. I know many people use it, and they use it to great skill. I personally don't like it, and although I do have a pot, this one, excuse me, this one is quite an old one, and I just decant a little bit into a smaller bottle that I can dip into quite easily. Now I tried the idea here, and on this one, believe it or not, and I think on one of the others, I tried doing different ways of applying this. I used a little steel embossing tool. I tried the matchstick, and I tried something else that was a little bit firmer in order to try and get a finer point. But this just binds up. It sort of clogs on the end of whatever you're using, and as hard as you try, you cannot really get that finer point. So what I then did, let that dry, and I darkened all the backgrounds, and the same on some blank pieces of paper, and just to see, let that all dry and see what happened. Okay, so the result of this one, well, you can see the paper just tore, and I felt that this was dry. I really did. This had dried over several hours, but it still managed to rip into the surface of the paper. I think if you're going to use it, you're better off using it on hot press paper. It's just geared a little stronger on the surface. This just gave away too quickly. The paper I'm using on all of these is cotton paper, little offcuts that I use for my abstract cards that I sell in the gallery. But that is the result. I wasn't happy with that at all, so that was the first reject. Then the second ones were these two here. These were on hot press paper, and to a point they worked quite well, although it's just the heaviness of the pigment, and you end up with such, I haven't even pulled this one off, I gave up with this one, but you can see how crude this looks, how unrefined it really is. You can't get those fine lines. I tried a little bit here with that embossing tool, but it really didn't work out too well, so I wasn't too happy with that result. I like the backgrounds, but I didn't like the cobwebs, just too much, too heavy. So those were two more rejects. Alright, let's come on to this one. This one again was masking fluid, and it didn't work for another reason. That's because I smeared some white on there and messed up the whole thing, so that was another reject. However, these remaining two pieces were just coloured pieces of paper. I'd used the paint on here and did nothing more. I even tried to play around with the idea of doing little what do they call it, you know, the bokeh effect, by using literally my finger just into the damp paint, just lifting some off and creating these little bokeh marks. Quite interesting, quite fun. But what I did was I used several different methods of applying white medium onto a dry painted surface, and one of those was using white ink through this pen. It really didn't work through this pen, just too fine a nib to do that, so that was a mistake. However, I did then push on with other ways of creating white marks onto a dark surface. One of those was the Atramentis white document ink. Not bad. No good if applied through a fine nib pen such as this. Fine if you're just drawing with this normally, but this needed a rigor to deliver the paint to the surface, but not bad when it was done. So let's put that to one side. I also used, and I gotta say predominantly use white gouache. You could also use white Liquitex or acrylic paint to do the same job. I just prefer using white gouache, so I use that. I also use these. Now this is a jelly roll pen. Not bad, but the ink in here is not really dense, so it can pick up very quickly the paint underneath, even though it's dry, and turn this a little bit of a cool, dull grey colour. So it's not as efficient. However, this is a Uni Posca. Now inside this is if you listen to that, there's a little ball of metal or something like that that agitates the contents inside here. Give it some agitation, mix the contents together, and you can get quite a strong white dot or mark with this. So it's not too great when it comes, if you go sort of too fast, it will break up, but it will deliver quite a nice little mark like so. Alright, so that's one thing you can do, and these aren't too expensive. But I do favour using this, and there's another reason why I enjoyed using this over all of the others, because with this one you can do what I did. Now here is a little ceramic, and you can see where it's dried up in here now, but I added two little piles here of paint, one white of course, but here I put a little bit of Aureolin or Indian yellow depending on your preference, just the merest hint. And it was Turner long ago who taught us that by adding that little snippet of yellow to white medium excites the brain, because it makes the white appear even brighter and even more warmth and strength in that. And conversely, you can make a cooler white by adding just a little bit of cobalt into the white too. So that's what I started using. Not too watered down. You don't want it to dry back weak. If you have paint like this, it really does need to be fairly fresh, fairly strong in pigment to water ratio, so that when it goes on and dries, it sort of pretty much doesn't move in terms of fade, because too watery it will fade back, it gets lighter, gets paler, and it will not have the effect that you so desire. So that's what I ended up using. This is going on a little bit, I do apologize. We'll get into a demonstration very quickly very soon. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to employ this method for the demonstration, and I will let you into a little secret and a bit of an owning up. I actually did start this film yesterday. I actually messed up the complete recording with regards to it did not save, and all the work that I put in was absolutely lost. So I have already done one here. This would have been the demonstration that I would have shown you yesterday had the film recorded, but because of that I'm going to be doing another one of these on the same size piece of paper, and let's just see how we get on with that one. Alright, so let's just quickly talk about the paper, and I'm going to be using a 7 by 10 inch Saunders Waterford block. Ideal little size. I use this on my plein air sketching easel, and it's just great because it sits on there quite nicely without being too much, and certainly doesn't take up a lot of room in my kit bag. It is a hot press surface. I realize that for me works a lot better, and it is a 300 GSM or 140 pounds. Now the surface being hot pressed, being smooth, just has a much better workability. You can actually work on this a lot harder than cold press papers, and for some reason the hot press process just makes it a little more sustainable without giving up the surface. It's a full cotton paper, and it will work very nicely for the needs today. Now the colors in here are predominantly the colors that I used on the other painting, so I didn't feel the need to just get rid of that and waste paint. We're going to carry on using that, just remix into those with some water and continue on. But what I will do is I'm just going to do a little sketch of our idea of the leaves and the little area. Okay, so what I've done for this one, unlike yesterday's demo that went horribly wrong, is I've turned it out to a portrait format. The reason being I wanted to change slightly the idea, because I have one painting already done in the photograph that I was showing you just now, I'm going to change that photograph for another shot. What I want to do is just set myself a little idea in pencil before we get started of how this will sort of look in the composition. So there's a little bit of a stem for this particular seed head. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quite literally put paint on here and let this dry before we come back in. This process is quite easy, quite quick, and hopefully not going to cause too many problems. Alright, now I need my paint to be quite thick, so I'm going to be coming in. The brushes that I'm using are of course my Rosemary & Company. This is a big large filbert in the Red Dot series, that a beautiful series of synthetic brushes, and they are vegan friendly brushes. They will not cause any problems for somebody who doesn't like using any animal hair, and they are the closest I've seen to good sable brushes. They hold water, they hold their shape, and they really are a versatile brush. Now the Red Dot series, along with any other of Rosemary's brushes, are all handmade by Rosemary & Company. And should you wish to buy any, then please, along the affiliate link when you go to checkout, just put my name, Paul Apps, in unbroken capitals in the affiliate link, and although you don't pay any more for it, at least I get a little thank you from Rosemary for promoting her brushes. And I would never ever promote something at all that I really didn't firmly believe in. Alright, I'm going to mix up into some of this again, pick up a little bit of aureolin into that, just giving myself a bit of a stronger color mix there, and a lighter one that's a little bit grungy because I've just had my brush in everything else. So we're going to mix that into there. It's a slightly better color. Wash my brush out for the final mix, and I'm going to come in here and mix a little bit of that lovely aureolin into that pan there as my initial wash in some of these areas, because what I want is a little bit of light over here, and you can see how carefully I am when it comes to sticking and keeping within the lines. You remember that as kids, when we come to colouring in our colouring books, we were always told to stay within the lines. I never did it then either. Never mind, it's all part of, isn't it? Alright, so that is going to be at least some of my green colour. And now for the rest of this, I'm going to be concentrating on some Payne's Grey, some indigo, whichever you have. It really doesn't make a lot of odds, but my colours are going to be quite thick. I think I quite like that. Now what I did do in the last picture, or one of them I showed you, is I used my finger to create some bokeh. Something like that. Used a thicker thing like that and just the tips just to make smaller circles and make little bits of bokeh like that. Okay, so I think it's pretty much dry. Certainly dry enough to carry on with the pigment. There is just a slight little ripple in this paper, but because it's a block, it will dry back, and once it is bone dry, it will be nice and flat. That's the whole idea behind a block of paper. All right, but I quite like this. I gotta say, I like it as it is. I know I'm going to enhance it now. I'm going to add pigment to it, but I really do quite like what that's doing. Now, for the purposes, before we go any further, these are the two wells of colour, the white with the yellow, the white with the blue, but I will squeeze in a bit of fresh colour. This will mix with it naturally anyway when I get going, but I just want to put in a little bit of raw colour so that we have some good pigment options. Come down here with that little bit of light of the hairs or the bits of stuff on the edges of the that bit. Oh, good lord, that's my age. The stem, what am I on? I think I go and have a lay down. I think I need a lay down. There we go. That gives an idea. All right, now we're going to have a few little bits like this suggested around some of our leaves, just something like that, catching a little bit of light through there. And we're going to bring a lot more of this light down through here, around the edges of this head there. A little bit more light, a little bit more water into the whole of this mix. Maybe pick up a little more yellow. And once we feel we've done enough to these heads, then we can start drawing our spidery webs. But all of this is just me scribbling around. I'm scribbling with intent for sure, but I am still scribbling. Nothing less than that. Now I'm going to bring a few marks this way in this area, like that. And that will be enough at the moment, because what I want to start doing now is doing some little traces like this, some little lines that suggest the little spider web connecting one part of the plant to another. Like that. You can see them all over this, catching that little bit of moisture, and the odd little sort of line through here and here. bring some more of these light taps through here. More scribbles. The stronger the paint to water mix, the stronger these areas will end up looking. So I'm just going to come up here and add some water droplets to some of these marks. And there I went wrong, didn't I? But it doesn't really make a lot of odds, because you can soon cover up any sort of marks that don't really work out for you. It doesn't make a lot of odds. It get quite confusing of what line goes to what part later on. Bring that right through there like that. Now I said there's a little line that joined that up to there. I'm going to bring that through there. Almost disappears. Just a few taps along its line. There's not water droplets on every single strand. It may be like this one, the odd one that you can see. You do need to look at that, and it really works quite nicely if you can work that like that. Go like through there, stop, and bring a few more into the plant like that. So these two plants are getting quite tied together with the shimmer of a complex web system. Now I've got to leave the longer line through here, I think, and I'm just trying to work it with my hand so I don't go too far out. I want a nice sweep, that will do. And from there I want to come down and to create some of the sort of complex shape that we find in our webs. I'm going to come right the way through with some of these like this, and they come round more. Now we've got the center of the web, and we're going to come down here, and I think we've got to do a lot more work when it comes to this. I'm just going to start bringing in some of these taps. Now, because these strands are downward, I suppose gravity will drag many of these little droplets of water in a downward motion. So I'm trying to be aware of that. Right, something like that. Fine little taps of the brush. Not overdoing too much of it. Easy done. Bring another one down through this way. Something like that. Now there is so much going on here. There's sort of lines, crossing lines, and you know, you just drive yourself nuts trying to mimic or replicate each and every one of them. So don't really do that. Just give a sense of what's happening here. That sorts that out. That gives that nice sort of balance to the whole thing without taking a line off to one side. I think that works quite nicely. I might just do, I haven't put any beads on here. Bring a few beads of water. Always going to be the longest part of any painting like this, where you're putting all this sort of fine detail into your painting. Don't think I've missed too many strands of web. A few extra thick ones where you get crossing over, maybe just a little extra sense of the light. That's enough of that. What I will do, I'm just going to come back in to this darker colour that we used on some of these. Just want to put a little bit more information, a little darker colour into the suggestion on this one here. Because this was invented late on in the day, I feel that we need that. let that dry, just pop a little bit of light on top of it right at the end there, and I think we're done deal. So hopefully we're finished. I quite like what we've done. I'm going to come in here and pick up a little bit of pinky colour. Just going to put my signature down in the bottom here. Sorted. That's done. Not that you need a signature with all these fingerprints all over the picture. It's pretty obvious who painted it. But there we are. Yeah, one spider's web completed. And it stacks up nicely with the one that I did yesterday. If I just put that to one side there, you have both of them in the picture. Side by side, both of them have employed pretty much the same idea. One thing I've seen this one's got, which I really, it's not in the photo, I'm just going to quickly put a little bit in. Just a few sort of linky parts here, you know, where across the top. And a few taps of light on there. A bit dry on me. Let's just put a little bit more information there. Okay everybody, I had heaps of fun doing that, and I'm sure you got something from it as well to take on into your own painting. Now I really do hope you have a go at this one, because it was a lot of fun, and you know, trialing it, seeing how you could best apply paint to come up with the final outcome. And I'm sure with a little bit more practice and a little bit more research, some of you will come up with even better ideas than I have. And I hope you do. I hope you have a lot of fun having a go at your own spider's webs in the morning sun covered in dew. I think they are fascinating to see, and I will certainly carry on trying to create a few more and trying to perfect the way that I do that. Every time you do a painting, as in the one that you've seen and the one I did yesterday, there were little bits that actually were improvements on the one before. And that's how painting should be. It's how you progress, it's how you learn, it's how practice does not make perfect, but it certainly always makes progress. Anyway, with all that said and done, don't forget there is my Patreon. If you want to get involved with that, there are a couple of tiers on there, $5, $10. Some of that content is exclusive every month, and I'd love to welcome you on board. And I also want to say a big thank you for anybody, and some of you have been buying me cups of coffee. So to you guys, thank you so much for the support that you're showing my YouTube channels by buying me a coffee, because every penny of that goes to help buying more materials and all the extra bits and pieces that I need week in, week out to make free videos for you guys on the channel. So thank you very much for that. And don't forget, there is a Sky course out there if you want to get involved with that. Also, don't forget my other channel, Paul's Mobile Studio. Check that one out. There's a lot of oil and watercolor plein airs in my portable or mobile studio, which is a T4 VW camper called Clarabelle. So enjoy those trips out and those little adventures. Last but not least, there is a new course coming out very shortly. It's all about ink and watercolor, or ink and washes. It's aimed at the beginner who wants to get started using different inks to create ink and wash watercolors. So look out for that one. It won't be too expensive, but there's heaps and heaps of content in there to help you out. So yeah, I'll let you know when that is released, but it will not be too long. Take care everybody, until the next video. Have fun, enjoy your painting. Let's see how you get on with this one. Take care, see you soon. Bye bye.